We are 4-0, undefeated with Dragonstorm in this league so far, and now we're going to be fighting the big bad wolf, Stiflenought itself. After the match, we'll take a look at the standings to see how our odds for top 8 are, but let's get into it. Kicking off game 1, I'll open with a Geothermal Crevice on the play. Opponent plays an island into Portent. This is Screaming Dreadnought. Now you might be saying, well, it could be Groatog, it could be some other thing, but if you see enough Stiflenought, you just get the vibe. You see the island art they're using, the confidence with which they throw at that island to the turn 1 Portent, and you just know that's a Stiflenought player. Opponent will draw on my upkeep off the Portent. I'll drop a Peat Bog and pass the turn. Stiflenought, of course, one of the biggest of big dogs in the format, and playing a lot of blue counterspells, which is exactly what my deck does not want to see on top of that. Thankfully, they do not have the turn 2 Dreadnought, so I will just continue to build up my mana and attempt to pass the turn, but they are going to toss down an Impulse hunting for that shrimp. On their turn, they're going to untap, miss a land drop, and simply cast out that Dreadnought. They are then going to attempt to stifle that Dreadnought trigger. I'm going to respond to the stifle, going to 19 with the City of Brass, and cast an Intuition. Now, they are likely thinking I am intuitioning for some answer to stifle, and that's why I'm timing it like this. However, the tried and true wisdom is typically to not counter the tutor, but counter whatever the tutor gets. So I'm trying to game it out a little here, trying to trick my opponent into not countering this intuition, which would make me stone cold dead. And if you're new to the format, you must be thinking, what do you mean counter? They've tapped out their mana, they've played out their biggest, most powerful combat. Well, they can still return 2 islands to their hand, gush, cast foil, which is a free counterspell you can discard islands for, daze, another classic. All things I simply just have to power through and hope they don't have enough of and or don't play on my spells correctly. I show them what I got, Dragonstorm, 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 and they realize they've been had. They express a little dismay at this point, but I am feeling like I might just be able to do something here. Stifle resolves, and they have a 12/12 trample on the battlefield. I'm going to start out with a Lion's Eye Diamond, Storm 1. This resolves, so I will sacrifice my Peat Bog and cast a Dark Ritual, Storm 2. Since Dragonstorm is in my hand, I can't really take advantage of Lion's Eye Diamond, so it was mainly played for the Storm count, and here comes a second one for the same purpose. If I had another Intuition or Burning Wish, I could use that mana better, but right now they are just fancy looking rocks. This is representing 13 mana just right here, and with Intuition, 15 mana with Ancient Tomb, this would have been plenty to Intuition plus Dragonstorm on the same turn. I'm just trying to take advantage of my mana on my opponent's turn, and again, try to slip through that Intuition. Take 2 from Ancient Tomb down to 17. Sack Geothermal Crevice. Take another from City of Brass, going down to 17, then 16. And I will cast that Dragonstorm with 6 unused mana stored in those Lion's Eye Diamonds. Of course, that cannot help cast anything in my hand. If you didn't know, Storm is a triggered ability, so when I cast Dragonstorm, a trigger will be put in the stack for Storm, and once that Storm trigger resolves, the copies of Dragonstorm will be created. This is yet another weakness versus Stiflenought, where they have Stifle, and they can not only stifle their shrimp, they can also stifle Dragonstorm itself, so I only get 1 original copy, assuming that's not also countered. They open by returning a land and casting Daze for one of the copies, so the triggers resolve. We have 3 copies plus the original for 4 total Dragonstorms, and at this point I let the Daze counter one of them, and I don't really remember if this was intentional. I don't know what's in my hand, but I just let Daze resolve and counter one of them. I'm thinking I have enough dragons. There's no way they're going to be able to counter all of them. But really, I probably should have just sacrificed one of my LEDs to pay for Daze, and I'd have another dragon on the stack. They do have yet another counterspell, another free counterspell to pitchcast foil one of my dragons. This leaves me with 2 searches at the end of the day. It could have been 3 if I sacrificed that Lion's Eye Diamond, but I wouldn't have any hand. Either way, it doesn't change the clock. The biggest dragon I can get is 6 power, and if there's only one of them,
the Rorix Bladewing there. And the second biggest is always going to be 4 power, even with haste or not. I suppose if we do get a third dragon, since it doesn't change the clock, if I get another Volcanic Dragon for haste, I could just get a Bladewing the Risen with that pump ability. That way, if somehow dragons are dealt with, I can try to find enough mana, even using those LEDs to make red and black to pump the team and make up for any missing dragons. Opponent needs a quick check on the mighty power of Volcanic Dragon and Rorix Bladewing, and I will swing in for 10. They are now on a 2-turn clock. We both are, but luckily mine's a little faster. If I can just untap and swing out once more, I have the first game versus Stiflenought. Our worst matchup, I feel confident in saying. Opponent will start by swinging for 12, put me to 4, and they will simply pass the turn. 1 island. They had to discard one of those island for foil, and they're still short on land drops. They're going to use that 1 mana for a surprise Chain of Vapor. I did not see this coming, and it really catches me off guard. Well, that's going to bounce at least 1 dragon to my hand and stop my ability to kill them before they smash out. Except all the chains, Chain of Vapor included, have the secondary effect of being able to sacrifice a land to copy the spell. I forget about this for a moment, and we start scooping up, and they're like, wait. I can copy that. Unfortunately, we are in combat, so I can't float any extra mana this turn to try to take advantage of it. I will just sacrifice the Ancient Tomb, since I am at 4 life, so there's not a lot of value I can get out of that. And City of Brass I can at least tap a few more times. I'm going to target their Phyrexian Dreadnought, and they're going to sacrifice their last land to get my dragon. We know this means they have 0 islands now, unless they were just holding 1 in hand to counterspell, but presumably they would have countered my copy of Chain of Vapor. I'll drop a Peat Bog and pass the turn back to them, and they do finally find that 3rd island. Play a Gemstone Mine. I'll make a couple of black off the Peat Bog, and I will use that 2 black to cast Cabal Ritual. This will make me only 5 black mana, and with my 2 lands, 2 red mana, which is enough to cast Volcanic Dragon, but not Rorix Bladewing because it has that triple red casting cost, unfortunately. Rorix Bladewing would put them on a new turn 2 clock, while Volcanic Dragon will take 3 swings to get in. They're going to untap, upkeep, draw, then simply pass the turn back, play out another Gemstone Mine. If I had another Ritual, this would be enough to throw out the Rorix. I do not, so I will simply swing in for 4 damage. This is now their last opportunity to find some way to deal with Volcanic Dragon. Even if they can play out the Dreadnought, it is not enough. It must be something like Chain of Vapor. And they play out the 2nd island and scoop it up. Dragonstorm has beaten the top dog in Premodern, Stiflenought, Game 1. We are 4-0, up a game versus Stiflenought. Now we just need to pick up 1 more game, and we have beaten our nemesis and secured a top 8. Getting into Game 2, I have sideboarded in a bunch of Duresses, hoping to nab counterspells before I attempt a combo and or Stifle or Vision Charm to stop them from comboing. Of course, Stifle helps them combo and stops my combo, so that's a very powerful tool for them. They can cast with very little mana. And I play a single tap land, and they just drop the turn 2 Dreadnought with Vision Charm. Now I have a couple of turns to try to pull something out, while they could just get to attack with a 12/12 Trample and hold up infinite blue mana for all of their counterspells. There's little hope of resolving anything, because their deck is just so dense with counterspells, and they're just going to have just blue mana up. And the well-timed counterspell, now that they know what I'm doing, could cripple me very easily, but I have to go for it, so I just drop a Gemstone Mine and pass. Ideally, obviously, I would have liked to try to do something while at least their lands were tapped out. Not that that would stop them from interacting with me, but I do not have enough resources to go for a turn 2 this game. They get in for 12, put me to 8. I'll start off with my last Death Flail, throwing out an Ancient Tomb, followed by a Lotus Petal. This is 6 mana represented. I'll sacrifice my Geothermal Crevice, make a black and a green, spend that black on a Dark Ritual, and they will counterspell it. We'll then pay 1 to cast another Dark Ritual. They will gush to try to find some answer. Finding none, Dark Ritual will resolve. Use Lion's Eye Diamond for blue. Take 2 from Ancient Tomb down to 6. And cast an Intuition so I can take a look at my library, see if there's anything that can get me out of this. Now, if all of my Dark Rituals had resolved and I wasn't forced to use Gemstone Mine to start up the black mana again for Dark Ritual, I would have enough, I think, to Intuition for Burning Wish for Living Death, and cast Living Death, which is an answer to Stiflenought. It'll stick it into the graveyard. It doesn't get many dragons back, but at least takes care of the shrimp for a while. So that was my only line available for me. I went for it and simply was unable to pull it off. Most decks are going to struggle against a turn 2 Dreadnought in the best of circumstances, and playing Dragonstorm is not those best of circumstances. Starting off game 3, I'll throw a Geothermal Crevice again. I'll play an Island Go. I'll play out a Lion's Eye Diamond out of my hand to get it under Daze while I have the free mana available. It does cost me a Storm count, and they simply have another turn 2 Dreadnought. I'll untap. I did miss a land drop turn 2. It's because my hand is full of lots of other mana. Let's play out another Geothermal Crevice and pass. If I remember correctly, my hand was just a couple mana short of comboing off, and so it seemed like the better odds to just keep it and assume we'll have at least a couple of turns to draw into what we need with good odds. Because surely they can't have a turn 3, turn 2 Stiflenought, but they did. Fortunately, we never saw any of our Duresses that we sideboarded in games 2 or 3. I'll swing in for 12, down to 8, play out a Forsaken City, which is a little unusual, and cast a Root Maze, which makes artifacts and lands come into play tapped. This doesn't really do much against me, because Lion's Eye Diamond, fun fact, doesn't need to tap to sacrifice, actually. You think of it like a Black Lotus, but it doesn't actually tap, it just sacrifices straight to the graveyard, so the only thing it really hits is Lotus Petal, and obviously my untapped lands, but most of my lands are coming in tapped anyways, so maybe they just had a dead card in the matchup and brought in Root Maze, but otherwise it doesn't seem particularly effective against me. We'll start sacrificing my lands, make a couple of mana, cast a Dark Ritual. They're going to bounce 2 lands to their hand, cast Gush, discard for foil, and I scoop it up at that. All right, well, we knew this going in, that this was going to be a particularly tough matchup. We got especially unlucky in that they had a turn 3, turn 2 Dreadnought every game. We never saw our Duresses. Maybe we could have mulliganed more for them, but obviously this kind of deck we need a lot of spells, so it's hard to just mulligan for a Duress that may or may not help. We might see a Vision Charm and a Stifle and a Dreadnought, and we're like, well, that doesn't help us very much. But I am at least glad we're able to pick up game 1. That felt pretty good. Right, at this point, I thought it'd be a good chance to stop and look at the standings. We are currently sitting at number 2 in the league with 1 match left to go. We're doing pretty well, obviously. We have a decent chance of getting into the top 8. There's folks that still have multiple games left to play that could catch up. We do have a pretty decent opponent match win percentage as well. If we can win the last match for round 6, we will be a lock. Either way, it's going to be exciting to see whether we make the cut or not. I mean, more Dragonstorm games, so that's fantastic. I also just wanted to take a moment just to reflect after playing Stiflenought about that deck. I think the difference between Dragonstorm and something like Dragonstorm and Stiflenought, obviously, Stiflenaught's just a much better deck. It's one of the top 2 decks in the format. But the reason why I just don't really like it very much is that, and I don't think it's particularly fun, is that it's simply too reliable. It is too straightforward. The fact that their combo is only 2 mana, they have redundant copies, between Stifle and Vision Charm for the combo, and that they can then back everything up with just tons and tons of counterspells, including multiple free counterspells between Daze, Foil, and Thwart, just makes it just a very uninteresting deck. Now, don't get me wrong, I've played some matches against Stiflenought that were extremely fun. There are certain matchups, like if you're playing Stasis or something else that's like just super, super heavily leaning into the interactive side, it can be a lot of fun to kind of just have a counter storm battle, or a counter spell battle. You can see my mind is on Storm. But against so many decks, there's just not a ton you can do. And obviously, this variation of Dragonstorm doesn't actually have a solid answer to Stiflenought. We could have easily put, some artifact hate in the sideboard, other than something like Living Death. We could have put an Overmaster in the sideboard, which is something I think I would do in the future to protect us a little bit against counter spells. But even just putting that aside, Stiflenought, I think, is just simply too reliable. I mean, we did get a turn 2 in this league, and that was awesome. And that felt sick because of how rare that is and how hard that is, and because of the risk reward that we had to put into to get there. We had to make a lot of sacrifices in our deck construction. We had to have a lot of things go right. Well, Stiflenought just needs to have 1/4 of, 1/8 of, and 2 islands in a monocolored deck, and they will still have protection on top of that doesn't cost any mana. And that's just like the risk to reward just isn't there, and I don't think the balance is appropriate. I think a suggestion I've seen that I think makes a lot of sense is looking at, if you're going to take something away from Stiflenought and its box of tools, is maybe Vision Charm, because Stifle is used elsewhere. It's a very cool utility piece, but Vision Charm is pretty much not used anywhere else that there isn't a Phyrexian Dreadnought present. And it's just, again, it just offers them so much redundancy, and the odds of hitting that turn 2 so much higher, and the mana investment is just so low. That might force them to start running things like Reality Ripple. Some decks already are, but that's of course on top of the Vision Charm package. But at least something that takes a little extra mana, that doesn't have all the extra utility that Vision Charm has on top of it, might just be enough just to take the edge off of Stiflenought. I think it would still be a super amazing deck that's still able and capable of pulling off those turn 2 shrimps with backup, but it would just take the edge off a little bit, add a little bit more risk reward to the deck building process. Of course, you cut down Dreadnought, that's just going to be good news for Enchantress, but that's its own thing. Just looking at Stiflenought, I just think the risk reward balance ultimately is not where it's at. Regardless, we are sitting very good in the league. We are very, very good for the top 8. We are looking like the odds are good, but hopefully we can just eliminate all doubt and secure it in round 6. I hope you will stick around, subscribe to catch the last match of the regular rounds, and hopefully the top 8 playoffs, where, frankly, if it's full of stuff like Stiflenought, we're going to get battered around a bit, but at that point, I think we're going to be playing for games instead of matches, and just getting a chance to show off with Dragonstorm against some of the top contenders in the field. Even just making the top 8 would be amazing with this deck. So, hope you, again, get subscribed, leave a like, and drop a comment below. What do you think? Should we ban something from Stiflenought? Should we ban something from Enchantress? Let me know. And until next time,